Good morning, good evening, wherever you are. I'm Brian, and I'm here with Aaron.
Hola, peoples.
And welcome to episode 10 of the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from our massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Today we're going to spend some time with Rodrigo Flores, the former CTO and founder of newScale. We're going to talk about cloud management. We're going to talk about APIs. We're going to talk about transforming a company around self-service and cloud-based deployments. Aaron, how you been, man?
Been good. I apologize. I actually was not able to make this interview about, 10, 15 minutes before we were actually scheduled to go on. Yet another major storm kind of went through the Raleigh area, and good old Time Warner got knocked out, and so unfortunately I was unable to make the interview.
I know, living in the South these days has been tough. We had some, the rest of the country's obviously had some, so yeah, we missed you. We're going to miss you on the interview. We taped this one a little ahead of doing the introduction, but so we're piecing this thing together. Aaron, we'll have you on the next one. A couple of things for the folks listening. We are going to, starting with this podcast and going through the next 3 or 4 of them, we've got some very good guests lined up. We're going to sort of go into a phase that's going to be about cloud management, APIs, open source in the cloud, around cloud management. We're going to look at a bunch of different angles. So for anybody that's interested in this space, tune in for the next couple, tell your friends. We're going to dive into that. And then we're also going to mix in some things from the recent trade shows. So EMC World went on, Interop was going on, Sapphire, Citrix's event was going on. There's been a couple of others that are going on here recently. So we're going to try and cover some news and notes and topics from all those as well in a dedicated news show or a news podcast that we'll get out here in the next couple of days as well. So, Aaron, anything else from you before we jump into talking to Rodrigo?
Nope, I'm good.
Oh, one last thing. You may have noticed, for anybody that's been out to the cloudcast.net website, we have our first non-fake sponsor, or I guess it's not truly a sponsor, it's more of an affiliate. So the name of the company is ManGreat, and
no, you got to say it like this. You got to say ManGreat.
Yeah, ManGreat. That's right. So we wanted to go out and get sponsors that did cool, manly stuff, fire and meat and things like that. But anyways, Aaron, you've been to my house and we've grilled out. ManGreat basically takes you from being an average Joe dude on your barbecue that is lucky to make chicken that doesn't have a ton of burn marks or undercooked or overcooked, and turns you into basically the greatest grill chef of all time. You throw the ManGreat on there, you turn the heat up full blast, you marinate whatever you're making, you throw it on there, and 5, 10, 15 minutes later, how long it takes, awesome food and raving reviews. So for anybody that likes to barbecue, that likes to light things on fire and grill out, we highly recommend those guys. If you click to them off our page, we get to wet our beaks a little bit. We get to buy some t-shirts for the folks that come on the show, and great product. So we're only going to endorse stuff that we like and we've used, and this will probably be the first of many non-fake sponsors that we're going to have going forward. So that's a good thing. All right, why don't we go ahead and jump into the interview? You're on the PTO list for this one. We'll get you on the next one, and let's get started with Rodrigo.
All right, let's go.
Let's go. Let's go.
Okay, it's good to be back. Today we're on with Rodrigo Flores. Rodrigo is previously founder and CTO of newScale. newScale was recently acquired by Cisco. Rodrigo, thanks for being on the show. Glad to have you today. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm delighted to be here at Cisco. It's a great adventure we're about to embark on.
Good. Where are you? Where in the world are you at today?
I'm sitting right now up in Piedmont, California, which is in Oakland Hills in Northern California, awaiting our move to the Cisco campus on Tuesday. So we'll be on Cisco campus fully onboarded on Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Good. So the acquisition closed a few weeks ago, a month or so ago. Where is newScale today? What's going on in the sort of newScale now in Cisco world?
So newScale was acquired 6 weeks ago. The acquisition closed. So we've been onboarding our people, our processes, and systems. So we are almost done with that. Mainly, we're working with a number of groups and putting new packages together for supporting our coalition partners like VCE, working on our roadmap plans and getting our products out. We had announced support for vCloud Director previously, so working on that. There's a bit of interest in that, and that combination of using newScale as the portal for VMware vCloud Director to really manage more than just VMs, but a complete service, all the services that are being provided by service providers today, so hosting and physical and virtual and cloud and virtual desktops and security and DR and backup. So there's a real desire to put a lot more services in the catalog that really encompass the entire life cycle that service providers are offering. And finally, the part that's very new for me is we are learning a lot about the kinds of self-service that we can bring to the network. And so we have some exciting work that we are beginning to do that we will share in due time.
Okay, good. So not only being able to request virtual machines or applications, at some point people may want to request a suite of firewall and security services or network types of services.
That's right. So if you think about it, and this is maybe goes into the future part of the conversation, is that today the enterprise applications out there are network stupid. So you need an intelligent network in order for those stupid apps to run. And I don't mean stupid like a moral judgment. Simply, the applications that have been built today are not aware of latency issues. They're not aware of where they reside in the network and how the different parts relate, how the app server relates to the database server. Yep. In a typical 3-tier application, it's usually you probably want that database server sitting next to the app server, right?
Right.
And so when you start moving to cloud, you have this problem in that applications never really knew where they were. So they expect the domain name to be the same. They expect the security of the network to be the same. They expect the ports to open to be the same, et cetera, et cetera. They don't adjust. They expect the IP address to be the same, right? So I won't mention guilty parties. But so now you pop up the VM, right? The VM comes up, fantastic, a miracle of sorts, but the application just completely collapses because it just was expecting the domain name was the same. Oh, and by the way, how the domain name got into the application is when you installed it. Because the manufacturer of that software never put a screen or an API to change the domain name. So essentially, you're forced to do a reinstall of the entire application because it has a different domain name. Okay. So we really need to think now of containers and being an intelligent network for the stupid apps.
Okay. Well, very cool. So, since we don't know how many of our potential listeners are under NDA, we'll sort of hold off on diving into that till later. We'll have you back on at some point. So beyond all the change going on in your job, I mean, your world has always evolved around this concept of change, right? The bulk of the content on your blog, servicecatalogs.com, is about mind shift change and helping organizations deal with these changes. How's the progress in that world evolving, right? You had a lot of kind of siloed organizations. You had a lot of ITIL-driven organizations. How's that progress moving and them changing to adapt?
Brian, we've been doing this for 10 years. We have a couple million users that order stuff through a newScale catalog on a daily basis in some of the largest companies in the world. So we've taken a lot of those organizations through this whole cultural change process. The first thing that happens is that they have to agree that there will be one unified place for all service requests for everything that IT does or facilities. And that second, they have to start thinking in terms of service offerings. The hardest part of the transition is for an IT organization that's used to thinking in terms of tasks and activities to now package them, transform that into service offerings that will be displayed through a catalog, that will be order, and then there will be some sort of automated workflow for provisioning that, whether it's a desktop, a BlackBerry, or a VM, or a storage capacity. All of that, it's in the end, they're all service offerings that need to be abstracted from the activities and then either put in the catalog to be manually provisioned, put in the catalog to be automatically provisioned. And so from that perspective, for us, cloud was super exciting because it became a forcing function. But it's tough for organizations. When I talk to data center admins, they say, well, we have vCenter, or we have this Zen Center, or we have something else. And, we can get a machine for you in a couple hours. It's not a big deal. But then we say, well, hold on a second. Why don't we go from the moment the customer needs it and wants it to the moment that it's actually provisioned and operating and pull on the thread, right? And the thread there says, yes, you're right. Activating a VM might be a matter of an hour, but there's usually a 60-day, 90-day, sometimes as much as 9-month process. That's the whole requirements, engineering, architecture,
budgeting.
Storage guy has that.
Budgeting, ordering, logistics, and all those sort of things.
And then the server guys have to have their say, and then the storage guys have to say. And so just coming back and saying to them, look, we're going to now have a new concept. We're going to have standards. What? Standards. Yeah. Yes, we're going to have certain standard offerings, just like Burger King has the Whopper, right?
Right.
And a mini Whopper and a chicken sandwich. And we will let the customer make some changes within those standards. You can add lettuce, or extra cheese or no pickle. So yes, it's not like it's a fix off the rack, but you can't all of a sudden add a filet mignon or a French. So we offer the standard package. So they have to think now like a product marketing person, and that makes them uncomfortable.
Sure. Well, and I got to imagine you've got more and more end users that are used to sort of, at least from a consumer perspective, they're used to sort of servicing themselves. I mean, they can go online, they can buy things, they can go and search for information. They're used to that. That's got to be another sort of pressure point for these guys. I mean, their users are saying, hey, I can do it myself.
So that's kind of what drove our business for a long time, right? Which is people were saying, I can go to Amazon and see and find and search really fast and learn a lot about what I need and order. I can go to Dell and configure what I need, and it shows up in a couple of weeks, right?
Right.
I can go to FedEx and track exactly where things are, and it's a really complex system, actually. And finally, I have a whole experience that is much nicer and aesthetically pleasing, and you dare say fun, with my app store, right?
Yep.
Why can't I have that when I order my computing infrastructure? Why is it so opaque? Why is it so painful? Why are all these Excel spreadsheets that I have to fill out and Word documents that have to be filled out? When I know what I want, I know what I need, right?
Yep.
And so that level of expectation is now the new normal, and the IT organizations out there are having to respond. One of my jokes is that people talk about hybrid cloud, will it be real, or when it will be real? My joke is hybrid cloud is already here. It's just that it's opaque. Nobody knows where it is. It's unmanaged. It's insecure, right? Every organization that says, are you using public cloud? No, we're not. And then you go to the development group, right? And Forrester has a great report on this. And then they say, yeah, we are. So by definition, you have a hybrid cloud. They're disconnected, unmanaged, insecure, but there you are. That's the new reality.
Yeah, it's interesting. We I think one of your customers. So we had a guy named Christian Riley who was on, who I think his company is one of your customers, and he has a great saying these days that he likes to say that basically the CTO or the IT organization will evolve to basically become a cloud concierge, right? And their job will just sort of be service coordination between what's out in the public domain, what's in the private domain, and they're just going to be like the guy who you find at the front desk of a hotel who just knows everything. They just know where stuff is, and they recommend places, but action of dealing with infrastructure or dealing with pricing models will all just sort of be built into their systems, the ones that are successful. So I think that's kind of what you're getting at, is the hybrids are out there today. They're not managed well, and they're not well understood, and that's what newScale starts to bring to the table. That's
right. And Christian knows that, and they're a great example because they actually do use public clouds for certain things, right? So they're already past the journey of like, should I or should I not? And so they're looking for, how do I manage that? And that's where the self-service catalog becomes important, right? I want one place, whether it's a physical server, a virtual server, or a cloud service, right? So I can know what we have, right? So I can apply proper policies, so that, and security, but on a self-service basis, right? Which is customers guided to the proper choice, right?
Now, once the self-service environment goes into place, once the portals are in place and the service catalogs are in place, how do the end users react to that? What I'm getting at is, I read an interesting blog the other day from somebody in the IT industry. I forget where it was, but in essence, what they said was, my company has sort of an internal self-service portal. I can go on there. I request my email. I request an email account, and they bill me on a monthly basis. And so I've got some sense of, how much space I consume or how much I use. And I read that and I went, technically that's kind of cool. And then I thought about it in the sense of, people have heartburn about paying 99 cents for an app on the Apple iTunes store, or they'll spend $4 every day for a cup of coffee, but they'll bitch and moan about a $9 piece of software. Like, now that you've got transparency out to the end user, like, how do they react to that? Do they have any sense of how much things cost, or like, what's their general reaction once things are more transparent and they can do stuff?
There are two reactions. There are two threads there. One is the reaction from end users is usually fantastic. I mean, we have quotes from our customers about what their customers say is that the best thing IT has ever done. Another great quote was like, we did the service catalog because it's the one thing that users could see that about the transformation that we were undergoing. And it was great. She said, we grew tired of silent victories. Yeah. Because IT does a lot of good stuff in the back end, right?
Yep.
But the users don't see it, right?
Right. It gives them a chance to be a hero. Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. So just generally, we might love our tellers at the bank, but we all try to use the ATM as much as possible, right?
Right.
Well, I think I've been inside a teller twice in the last 10 years.
Exactly.
So we all prefer online banking and ATMs to waiting in line and waiting for an account manager. And that's kind of the true. In terms of transparency, we've noticed that there are two general kinds of companies. Those who have a chargeback culture already for a number of reasons and strong chargeback culture, and it is just the way it works, right?
Right.
And then the rest of them have variances with most common ways, like the users don't see anything. They don't know what it costs. IT is in a position where they have to be are both a service provider and a regulator, and that creates a lot of conflict, both and bad emotions, right? In other words, I don't tell you what things cost. So when that happens, people tend to overconsume. Because we have limited capacity, we have to put policies and rules about that consumption. So I'm not able to give somebody a choice. It's like, well, if you really want 5 gigabytes of email storage, go ahead. It's just going to cost this, right?
Right.
There's not. So instead, everybody gets 1 gigabyte because we can't have any more than that, right?
Yeah.
And that creates that is a bad place to be when you're both a service provider and a regulator. So my approach has been move the regulation as much as possible into the service catalog so it's self-regulating. And if you can't do chargeback, at least do showback. And a great anecdote I have is one of my early customers, they put not just IT services, but they also put facilities and plant management services in the catalog. And one of them was carpet cleaning.
Oh, okay.
And they put the cost of carpet cleaning, which was done by the building maintenance people, was $200. So any time somebody needed their carpet cleaned because they spilled coffee or something bad, they request the carpet cleaning, and it would come in and it was $200. But nobody knew that, right? It was just clean the carpet.
Right,
It's just magically
just showed up. Yep.
When they put the price, which was not charged to the user, just here's the cost, demand for that service dropped 40%.
So in essence, so there's almost like huge value in just kind of education for education's sake, as opposed to sort of imposing a pain on them that says, you must pay this or you're gonna, you'd be in trouble for getting billed. But there's value in just sort of open education of like what things cost or how much a group is consuming. And okay, that's the thing that's always interesting when you're dealing with changes that aren't purely technology. They're changes that involve people and psychology. There's always those little tricks that you talk to the people that have done it a lot, and they go, here's this little nuanced thing, and if you can get the secretary to buy in, or if you can get this person to buy in, that's the trick to it. And that sounds like one of the things that you find is successful.
That's right. So, exactly. So in cloud computing, we have a new workshop we have developed called Cloud Weaver that we are onboarding onto Cisco, which is to actually teach somebody how to build a cloud front office, because there's a lot of focus on, let's call it in the factory, in the back office, like, here's the network, the storage, the compute, right? And then they start building their catalog. And one of the things that happens is, if you think about it, the catalog really interacts with the customer and the users and the customers, right?
Yep.
In ITIL terms. And so they start understanding requirements. Okay, well, customers would really like to be able to have a SQL server. Oh, okay. But, to have SQL server, you need to tune it in a particular way with the network in a particular way. Oh, okay. So how do we give them a VLAN that's appropriate for SQL server? Oh, we hadn't thought about that. We were just going to put you in a VLAN, right? So what we've seen in the clouds development that we've done is that the front office service design drives the back office design.
Okay.
And one of the things that I see people doing wrong is they're building the factory and then thinking of the store rather than thinking of the store and the factory together at the same time.
Gotcha.
And the result is there's a lot of churn, right? Because now you have to keep making changes to the back end, right?
Right.
And from minor things to very big things, right?
Okay, so it's sort of the classic. If you approach it as sort of build it and they will come without getting, kind of end user feedback and it's sort of like demand based feedback, you're probably going to struggle if you're treating it sort of like you talked about as like a product manager might do, in that you're taking market feedback, you're trying to sort of solve problems in the way that they think about problems. You've got a far better chance of being successful.
That's right.
And then marrying it on the back end is almost the easier of the two problems to deal with.
Right.
Okay.
And one of the tricks we learned in the catalog, and here's a free trip in building catalogs, is always look for high volume requests. In other words, it might not be the most important thing, but if you have a lot of volume, it's worth pursuing first, because what it does is it trains people to go to the catalog. Okay, so the more they use it, the more they'll want to use it. And so look for high volume requests. And for that, you need to understand, again, what are your services and how are they requested? How are they? What's the life cycle for them? Like, how are they? Are there lots of changes? In our old traditional business of cloud, which I consider the future business too, one of the biggest sources of requests is application access, identity management application access. Like,
Gotcha.
I need access to Salesforce.com in the Northwest region as a director level with the following reports, and I need to be able to see this kind of pipeline, right?
Yeah.
Well, so this is not a matter of, gee, I get you an ID in Salesforce, right? It's no good, right? Well, ERP systems and all kinds of systems are full of this very fine-grained roles with all kinds of different views and reporting structures that had to be fed. And people are always leaving the company and coming into the company and moving positions and being hired and being promoted. So there's a lot of churn in that. And so that's a good place, for example, to focus on. And the way this goes forward from a cloud perspective is, think about it. As we start using cloud services, it's the same darn process, right?
Right.
Whether I'm giving you access to Siebel internally or to Salesforce externally, I still need to know, how do I request access in this particular role, in this particular territory, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep. Okay. And I assume that you get some of those high volume things right. You're going to have kind of natural viral. It went well. He tells his coworker. This is a better way of doing it. This saved me some time, and you find sort of internal champions doing that.
That's right. And then what the phenomenon we see traditionally is that some moment then other groups want to be on board and on the catalog, where people say, well, that was pretty successful what you did there for developing VMs, but we'd like to now take in our Unix. Can we do the same thing with Unix?
Okay.
And can we do the same thing with storage? And what about the network? And what about security? Right? Because from the point of view of that user, they need a development environment for PeopleSoft apps, and that includes compute, storage, network security, access, certain surrounding services like monitoring, backup, antivirus. They're not looking to deal with every silo individually. They want to deal with the whole thing holistically.
Right. So it probably tends to sort of, the projects kind of keep growing on top of each other as you win the first one, you get a successful deployment, and other people want to join on board. Well, good. We talked early on. So newScale, even though cloud is a big deal, and you guys have been winning awards lately, you won VMworld 2010 Product of the Year. You guys have been in business for a decent number of years. You've been, I'm guessing, through kind of the cycles of, ITIL was adopted, and ITIL, people became certified in it and became part of people's culture, and now we're moving into cloud, which is sort of a more kind of free-flowing services as you need them dynamic. One of the things that you get into a lot on your blog is this sort of conflict between the more structured kind of ITIL-centric people and the more kind of cloud way of doing it. Any insight into kind of where that world's going, and how, if you're trying to work with a group that's very ITIL-centric, how do you start to change them, or what's the way to talk? What's the way to talk their language to get them to buy into these new models?
Well, I actually think that ITIL has a lot to offer to cloud, and vice versa. Which what you read in my blog is the fact that there is a certain class of ITIL consultant that is not technically savvy on the cloud technology.
Okay.
And so then the problem starts where let's take, like, you try to do service design, which is a whole ITIL process, right? It's very difficult to do a service design if you don't know what the underlying technology is. So what I see sometimes with this in the ITIL world, and I call them ITIListas, is the focus on, like, it's just a change management process. So everything's a change management process. And so what we're going to do is have a change control board, and and then we're going to have this document that you fill out, and you go through the change process. I'm going, whoa, hold on a second. That's the old world, right? And there's still going to be that there for a long time, right? Maybe forever, maybe. But what we now need to do is think about how we can automate the whole thing away, because frankly, people suck at process. People
True.
Truly suck at process. We get sick, we're late, we had a bad day. There's a whole bunch of things that happen. So what you want to do is be able to, once you have, is to standardize certain offerings, right? And then automate them so that you can remove all the people out of them. And then, do you get rid of the people? No, there's a lot more work that needs to be done where people are needed. So I see the process and project as a continuum, right? When we have to do something brand new, the only way you're going to do that is get a whole bunch of smart people in a room and try to figure out what to do, right? And brainstorming, eventually get a project because you've never done it before. But when we talk about popping up a VM, which we are doing 100 times a day, dude, automate that.
Yeah. You don't
get rid of that. You don't need to.
Don't need a committee for that stuff.
You don't need a committee. And by the way, there's zero competitive advantage. This is where portfolio management becomes interesting, right? What activities are you doing that provide no differentiation? By the way, being good at delivering Microsoft typewriters does not provide any competitive advantage, right?
Exactly.
So why not find a way that you don't do that? Because you know what? There are other things, like, for example, improving cycle time in manufacturing provides competitive advantage, and there are systems and people and those applications that are waiting there ahead of a Windows 7 refresh, right? And yes, we should do Windows 7 refresh, but those kind of things, which Jeffrey Moore calls context, right? He talks a lot about core versus context. Core is how you make your money, how you differentiate, is why people buy. And then context is all this stuff. Well, in IT, we're full of context, and some context is, we cannot get rid of it because the law and regulation says we have to have it. But there's other contexts that we can get rid of, and there's always new core coming in anyway.
Oh, okay, and that makes sense. I think the way I heard somebody phrase it the other day was, while people tend to, immediate gut reaction is like automation is going to get rid of people. The reality is people are busy. I mean, like the queues aren't getting any smaller for IT. In essence, what automation does is it sort of gets rid of the things that people don't like about you or your group, and it allows you to sort of emphasize the things that they do like about your group. And
exactly right. Yeah. And also, and we do need automation more than ever because the explosion in computing demand. We used to have like maybe one computer per person in a company. Now all of us have a mobile device, and maybe two, with an iPad, an iPhone, the Mac laptop, the computer at home. I mean, I have 20 IP addresses in my home, right?
Exactly.
It used to be the 3-car garage. Now I'm running out of IP addresses at home. So you have this incredible explosion in demand, and right now in a typical organization, you will have maybe one admin for 50 servers, 70 servers, some number like that, as I've seen. Some really well-run companies, like I attended a Wall Street financial firm. They have one admin for every 1,000 servers. And how do you do that? Well, automation, right?
Exactly.
But then you go to Google, and then Google has one admin for every 20,000 servers, right?
Right, they do one or two things lots and lots of times over and over again, and you get economies of scale. That's
right, and the only way you can do that is through automation, right?
Right, exactly.
So I don't think I don't think Google stopped hiring people. I think they're still hiring because they're still growing. But you can't have 1 million people managing servers because you have 10 million servers. That just doesn't work, right?
Right, exactly. So let's shift gears a little bit. Sort of cloud management space, if you throw a big blanket over what sort of newScale does, but what a lot of people, I mean, there's literally hundreds of companies these days. I was talking a few weeks ago, we were out at Cloud Connect, and it was tons and tons of companies. And the trick is, like, how do, with all this stuff going on, you've got people that do service catalogs and portals, you've got people that are doing orchestration. At the infrastructure level, you've got companies that do orchestration or sort of like image management and virtual applications. And like, how do you find that customers or channel partners are making any sense of this? Because a lot of times a company will have a kind of a, like you said, a core, but then their data sheet says, well, I do this and I do that. And like, are you finding it hard for the customers you talk to make sense of, what are the right suite of tools to use, or the right, suites to work together with? Is it getting too confusing, or is this just the natural evolution because cloud's hot and automation is driving a lot of value in the business?
Yeah, I think it's part of the evolution. I mean, we are in the explosive moment. I remember when the internet first got hot around 95 and then exploded 96, with Yahoo going public, and 95 with Netscape, right? And all of a sudden everybody was .com, right? And there was all kinds of variety of tools for building stuff. So we're at a moment of as Chairman Mao would say, let 1,000 flowers bloom, right? And then of course when they bloom, he shot him. But right now we're kind of at that stage in cloud computing, which is fantastic, right? There's a lot of innovation, there are a lot of companies, there's a lot of models emerging out of the primordial ooze of Silicon Valley and other places. So we're seeing 4-legged creatures and 5-legged creatures, and some have the ear on the head, right? So some of those variations don't make any sense and won't survive, but we don't know which ones yet, right? Evolution has to happen, and my guess is that we have a couple of years of a lot of diversity, and then there'll be more of a understanding of the stack. So the major battle, of course, is going to be around cloud APIs, right? Yeah. And that's a battle that has not yet started. It's almost ready to start, but not yet started between the different APIs out there.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because that was one of the things that I wanted to touch on is. Everybody talks about open APIs, or they talk about REST, or REST-like, RESTful, SOAP, web service. I mean, What's going on in that space? I got to imagine, for you guys, you're having to integrate with all sorts of systems, right? Homegrown systems and commercial systems, and everybody wants to say, well, I have an API. Like, where's that going? I mean, are there any standardizations coming, or is it just, you have to be really good and flexible to be effective in this space these days?
Yeah, it's a great question. It is a lot of work to keep up with all the API stuff that's happening out there. But in general, today, an API, how you use the API, whether it's RESTful or SOAP, is not that important. REST is kind of winning the war just because it's easier to hack. So you have a lot of people who are playing around with stuff and trying things. So, REST lets you do a little bit and get a little success, so which is encouraging. So you get a little more. So I think REST is certainly winning, but it doesn't really matter whether it's Java. If you're a Java programmer, you prefer a Java API. If you're a C# programmer, you prefer a C# API. So there's a lot of passion around that. So that's the less interesting part. The more important part from our point of view is what are the models that are underneath those APIs. Okay, so if you look, let's take the Amazon API, the original EC2 API. That one, you have major objects like you have your VM, and if you notice their size, they're small, medium, large, right? If you go to vCloud Director, for example, in that API, you don't have the concept of small, medium, and large. You have the concept of configuration, how much RAM, storage, how many NICs. So you do a lot more configuration. In the Amazon world, you have one NIC, virtual NIC. You don't have two. Right? There's no management NIC, and so they all have a model, right? And so this is why I don't believe that there's going to be one API for a long time, because there's essentially different classes of data center models. In the network model for Amazon is flat, right? Every V, it's latent. You don't have any control over latency. You don't know where things are placed, so you have to do a lot of things in your code to make sure. While on other APIs, they may give you control over certain aspects of the network, right? Okay. And that's an area that I think Cisco has a great role to play. Take something like Savvis. They actually have APIs that give you access to switches and routers, right? Yep. You go to is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? The answer is depends, right? Depends on your application. This is going back to my stupid apps. If you have smart brand new apps you're building, Amazon is fantastic. It's on demand, is cheap, is elastic. They have a great number of services, and by now they also support virtual private cloud. So I don't want to say they don't do that. So they have a great number of services. But if you have something like a certain classes of applications that are very latency unaware, you need to have a lot more control, right? You might go to Rackspace and have your app servers running on the cloud and your database server running on a dedicated host, and they let you mix things like that. Yep. And that's good for some apps. I can't do that with Amazon. So every API has an implicit model, and and the important thing is the model underneath. Okay. And there's still more models to come, and there will come a moment where we'll have say, you know what? I think the models that we have for cloud cover X%, or I want to say 80%, and that's probably good enough where there'll be a consolidation, and then it doesn't matter if the API, if the way I create a VM in Amazon or the way I create a VM in vCloud are roughly conceptually similar. The part that causes heartburn is the underlying models, because I have to model it differently. Sure. And that's where the bigger difference is. I'm sorry, I've gone on too long on that. But
No.
A lot of time.
That's good, and it's actually it sort of leads to the next thing I wanted to touch on was there's a bunch of it tends to be when you have kind of uncertainty like this, or you've got a lot of different options, a couple of models tend to win out, right? People will sort of standardize around 2 or 3 or 4 buckets, right? Maybe there's an Amazon bucket, and there's some open projects going on these days. So you've got things like OpenStack, you've got some of these open PaaS platforms like a Cloud Foundry, or right. Red Hat's, I think they're calling it Open Forms, and some so forth. Like, yeah. Are those a good thing overall? I mean, are those ultimately going to kind of drive some level of standardization, or are those just kind of iterations from vendors, and we'll see what happens with them?
Yeah, from a software developer point of view, right? I am the customer for those APIs. It's the job of those companies to try to seduce people like us, a newScale, or and all the smaller companies into supporting the API. Whoever has more developers, right. Wins, right? So, having said that, as they compete and they start having similar models or close enough, from a software development perspective, we can always abstract the API, like Adrian with JClouds does, right?
Sure.
And say, you know what, Amazon, it's cool that you have RDS there for relational data service, right? But I know that I can't move that if I go to GoGrid or if I go to Terramark, so I am not going to use that. So you end up seeing what happened in the SQL world, which is there's all kinds of really cool value-added features that are in Microsoft SQL Server and Oracle, but at newScale, we want to support both. So guess what we do? We abstract a layer higher, and we only use the common features between the both of them, and then and manage the differences through the code system. So that's kind of how things are going to end up. And from our point of view, if you end up with 2 or 3 or even 4 APIs that are dominant, that's not a bad thing. Actually, okay. That's pretty good. What wouldn't work is to have 60 APIs.
I gotcha. So eventually you sort of get it boiled down to a manageable number, and then you use things like abstraction to basically say, well, you're not going to get the best of all of them, but you're going to get a level of simplicity or a commonality that's going to make your life ultimately probably easier, because that super cool feature is probably kind of a niche case thing. You may not need it as much, but you're going to need the other 80. It's sort of an 80-20 rule type of thing, right?
That's right, and you make decisions, right? So product decisions that affect your competitiveness in the marketplace.
Sure.
So there may be people out there that their value added is that they support a whole bunch of clouds, right?
Yep.
And so I'm thinking of George Reese's company,
in Stratus.
In Stratus, right? So they support a whole bunch of clouds out there. So if I, as a customer, value having that freedom and flexibility, then it's a great product to use, right?
Right.
On the other hand, if I am pretty sure that I'm committed to VMware and I'm going to use VMware internally, and I'm going to go with a vCloud kind of thing, I probably prefer a product that has a deeper integration and more feature set and supports more of what's in vCloud and vCenter, right? And it's more aware of that. So then my product may be a cloud management software that is infinitely very aware of vCloud and what it offers. Mm-hmm. And therefore I compete for that business, and they're different customers, right? Whoa, no, I want to be free, and the other one says, no, I want to be deep, right?
Yep.
And the market, as I said, will determine which one. I think there's room for all of them actually right now.
Okay, so sort of last question, we'll wrap it up. You were a former CTO, which means that a lot of times you have to break out your crystal ball and kind of predict the future and so forth. So there's a number of strong or sort of evolving cloud management platforms that are commercial based, right? So the vClouds of the world and BMC with Cloud Lifecycle Manager and a number of others. And then you've got sort of a bunch of burgeoning, Cloud.com and Open Nimbus and OpenStack and Eucalyptus. And do you see one mode or the other kind of gaining traction with customers? Are you getting a sense that the customers want more commercial, or are they more open, or is that battle still in the really early stages?
It's still early stages, but just to kind of say, customers always want commercial. I don't mean they don't want open source too. They want commercial. The whole open source model is I'm open source, but then I charge you for services or premium. And there are a whole bunch of models, right? I won't go into what they are.
So it's a matter of finding the next Red Hat for open management, essentially.
Yeah, and or there may not be, right? Management operating systems tend to have shown that a winner takes all strategy seems to be to work there. While in software management stacks, we haven't seen that. If you look at the prior to cloud, the market share of BMC, CA, HP, and IBM, on a good day, they were 40% together of the software management category. The rest was infinitely variable, and the reason is, again, going back, some prefer to have something that manages a broad array of things. Others need a very specific, like, no, I need you to do this backup for DB2, and I'm going to be the best backup management software for DB2, and I'm going to blow anybody away, right? So great. Now you capture that segment. It may not be a big segment, but it might be enough of a segment to have a successful small niche company and make a nice living, right? So
okay.
So with cloud, right? You have OpenStack, right?
Yep.
OpenStack has a lot of momentum. You have vCloud. Well, vCloud has a lot of momentum. And then you have Eucalyptus, and Eucalyptus has a lot of momentum because of the API. I think that's brilliant that what they did there, which is why we partnered with them early on, right? And it's because, from our perspective, hey, we already support the Amazon API, newScale, so here we can support the Amazon API for the private cloud, right?
Okay. So you expect to see sort of a lot of options and probably similar to what we've seen in the past in terms of the mix of commercial and then a wide variety of people choosing other choices.
Right.
Okay.
Right. I could see somebody taking OpenStack and putting a vCloud API on top of it and saying, those are the models we support. Now, if you look from the point of view of a developer like us, right? Then for us, that's a vCloud, right? We don't know. That's the beauty of the abstraction layer.
Very true. Very true. Well, Rodrigo, thank you very much for your time. You're in high demand in terms of not only kind of working with customers, but talking to the industry. Any place people might be able to see you over the next couple of months in terms of speakings or keynotes or anywhere like that?
I'm brand new at Cisco, so I'm just getting on the keynotes. I'll be at Cisco Live, and we will be demonstrating our products there. I hope to be at a Cisco Networkers event pretty soon. I will be attending what's called Structure 11 here in San Francisco. So,
okay, yep. I assume you'll be like at VMworld
and we'll be at VMworld, right? Of course. So we will be at a number of places, and you'll see me speak probably in the next cycle of Cisco conferences. As I'm now just signing up for the speaker program, or your local EBC.
Okay, well there you go. And of course, if people want to follow you, you're at RF Flores on Twitter and www.servicecatalogs.com. So thank you very much for your time. This has been fun. Hopefully we can get you back on in a few months when more of the Cisco stuff has been, especially around automating the network. I think there'll be a lot of people that want to hear about that. So thank you again for your time, and great talking to you.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Thank you.
Let's go.
We're out of time for this week. A big thank you to Rodrigo. You can follow us on Twitter at @thecloudcastnet or reach us at thecloudcast.net, where you'll find links to the show and show notes. You can leave us a comment or send us an email and details on how to stream us on Stitcher. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everybody.